765. It's an urban city. The population consists of about 46% Caucasian, about 42% African American, and just a little over 6 or 7% Hispanic. I'm a very progressive chief, which is why I'm here. It's a good fit for my personality. I gotta say, I've been welcomed with open arms from staff, community, various groups. I am where I need to be. The women and men of this department are very unique in the sense that I notice very readily that they truly like one another. And I don't say that tongue in cheek. I've been around. Not only do they like one another, they like their professional staff, non-sworn. They're small but mighty. They have a genuine, can-do, want-to-do better mindset. And that's through and through, from the bottom through the top. And I'm just fortunate enough to be here to absorb some of this positive energy. I know things historically have been difficult all across the nation. But I want these women and men of this department to get their just due. I want them to get their roses. We got work to do. We all got work to do. So I know you don't want to hear me talk a whole lot. I'll stop right there, and I'll field any questions you have, with the exception of any pending discipline or anything deeply personal.
Why did you decide this was the career for you? Why policing?
Good question. So I grew up in New Brunswick, New Jersey, which is an urban setting. In my community, it was only African Americans and Hispanics. My experience with outside groups were police who happened to be Caucasian, and my teachers and my coaches who also were Caucasian. Now, we didn't have a very good relationship. When I say we, the folks in the community with PD, I'm not going to pretend that we did. We just did not. And we knew when PD came into our community, somebody was going to jail, and somebody was going to jail bloody. That's just the way it was. So as a young man, I was relatively tall for my age. I stopped growing about age 14. This is as tall as I got. I thought I was going to be like 7 foot tall, you know, be in the NBA or something. And because I looked like a man, I started getting stopped by PD. And some of you have heard this story before, but one particular morning, it was snowing, and I was stopped by PD, and they thought I was a suspect to a crime, and I wasn't. And one of the officers assaulted me as I was walking away. So a couple weeks later, I was stopped again by PD, and I was frustrated after being stopped so many times that I resisted a little bit when they put their hands on me. I subsequently went to kiddie jail. Full disclosure, I have been arrested as a juvenile. Fortunately, those charges did not stick. And anything with respect to my history has been expunged. So I go to live with my grandparents in North Carolina. I have this phrase, and it's true: the me I see is the me I'll be. Kids have a tendency to replicate what they see. So in New Jersey, I saw hustlers and pimps and you name it. And that's the way my mindset was starting to develop. Fortunately, I was a good enough athlete that my coaches, after the encounter with law enforcement, went to my mother and, you know, wanted to know if there was somewhere she could send me different from that environment. So I ended up moving to North Carolina. Pretty good athlete. Got a football scholarship to Georgia Southern University. 6-time national champions. 2 times on my finger. I had to put that in there. So my senior year, I was, doing a game. And I happened to get up from the ground, and I looked over there in the corner, and I saw this African-American police officer. I'd never seen one in my life. Heck, I didn't know, they could be police. And as soon as I saw him, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I tried out for the National Football League. That did not work out, obviously, so I joined the police department in Norfolk. And I had a very solid career. I was the first officer in the history of the department to be promoted at every rank, having been promoted 9 times to get to be chief. I learned a great deal about policing people, particularly those communities that didn't necessarily trust the police. We developed a model in Norfolk where we were highlighted by the International Associations of Chiefs of Police in August of 2020, shortly after the George Floyd situation. We were highlighted for our various programs that help bridge that gap. I like to call it authentic community policing. I know a lot of departments do various things. Some of the things they do, coffee with the cop, and that's fine. But you don't really get to know the women and men of the department with a one-off. It has to be multiple contact, and it has to be authentic. I'd be happy to send any of you the link highlighting some of the things I'm talking about. I would like to do that here in Urbana. Right now, we don't have the capacity. But I suspect with the support of the community, with the support of City Council, these women and men are ready to go. They are ready to expand this department, make it a little bit better. It's a great department now, but everyone can improve. So that was pretty much why I became law enforcement. Yes, ma'am.
Chief, my name's Mary Shank. I work at the News Gazette.
Hey.
Been there 40 years and grown up with most of these men or helped raise them.
You've done a fine job.
Thank you, thank you. I have enjoyed working with them because they're a long history in this department. Call the guy you need. Questions. You have said on more than one occasion, this department's going to look different. With the exception of seeing these guys in dress blues, I'm wondering what you mean by that. I want you to address the whole transparency thing. Seems popular to say that these days. Timely reporting, we have a system not very helpful to the general public. But anyway, start with what the different question.
Well, by looking different, I think right now, in this moment, this is different. I can tell you, once we get the capacity that's required to do the authentic policing, we're going to be in communities, door to door, asking the citizens of Urbana, how do we police you? Okay, I think as a profession, we have a tendency to think that we know what's best for the community. I think we have to allow the community an opportunity to have input, whether it's policies, procedures, things of that nature. Historically, we've been tight, we've been guarded. I'll give you an example. In Norfolk, we created a use of force dashboard. Shortly after George Floyd, the community wanted to see the use of force. And I had no problem revealing that information because I knew what was there. So now a citizen could go and, you know, in the comfort of their home and activate that information. I believe in community having say. Give an example. I had a young investigator investigate a homicide, and the victim was a transsexual female. The officers just joined his job, and he got confused on the pronouns. The family became upset. The LGBTQ community became upset. So I look at problems as an opportunity to close the gap and build understanding. So as a police chief, my job is, one, to protect my officers when warranted, underscore when warranted. In this case, it was warranted. So I develop, with the assistance of the LGBTQ plus community, a policy, one of the first in the country, in how we go about interfacing with that community. But you heard me say earlier about involving community. The beauty of that policy was, at the table was my command staff and the LGBTQ plus community, developing a policy that was unique to them, and it also afforded my officers a better understanding of how to navigate under those circumstances. So that's what I mean by transparency. Transparency is not just, here you go. Transparency is, here you go, and let me allow you to help us serve you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Chief. I'm Karen. I work for WAND News. We're based out of Decatur, but we definitely cover Champaign-Urbana. Recently, the city of Urbana put in quite a bit of money to do sort of a procedure it's through a third party called Barry Dunn, and it's going to go through the police department, it's going to go through the fire department. What do you anticipate with those results, and how do you feel about when they come out? Are you open to making those changes?
So I've worked with Barry Dunn before. They're not new to me. I worked with them in 2017 in Norfolk regarding staffing and how do we serve the community better. They turned out a very fantastic product. I suspect they would do the same. I just had a brief conversation with them yesterday about where we are, and they should have something out in the coming weeks with respect to how do we serve the community and what does a new department looks like in terms of providing said services. So I'm very familiar with them, so I won't get in front of them. I'll let them deliver that information. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, do you have a plan to kind of address that?
Yes, we had the same situation in Norfolk, and unfortunately, that's across the nation. You know, when it comes to youth crime, or any crime for that matter, folks have a tendency to put it all on the police. You all have a responsibility, to include media, parents, community. Now, at this point, if families could fix it, they would have done it already. So it requires the assistance of city government, federal government. It's not just police, but I'll answer your question directly. So across the nation, there's an issue with gun violence in youth, right? That's what you're talking about. So in Norfolk, in 2017, there was an article, and the article had a caption of 3 young African-American, and they each had a handgun. They were holding the handgun in the air, and they had these big smiles. These were young men. Quite naturally, the question is, how are they getting these guns? So what we started doing is, historically in my department, in a lot of departments, you recover a weapon, and you place the weapon in a voucher, just in abeyance, and never to look at it again, right? Unless the trial came up. So what bothered me also was 2 of those young men were dead within 2 months. The remaining one, I made it a point to have a conversation with him and you know, wanted to know, you know, why the violence and why the necessary access, or you felt compelled to have a handgun. A lot of them said we have no opportunity. A lot of them said we are the breadwinners for our families. A lot of them said, or he said, if I did not have a gun, someone would kill me. So going back to the practice, we started capturing the data of the handgun. This is, I'm very proud of this because the moment I gathered all the data, I started getting information and requests from politicians. That's when you know you got it right. So just to real quickly sum it up, we recovered over 5,000 guns in a 3-4 year period. Out of that 5,000 guns, only 200 was reported stolen. That's a clue, folks. That's a clue that there's some straw purchasing going on. So 5,000 guns are purchased legally from point A. Point B, 96, 97% of those guns are in the hands of felons, youth, in black and brown communities. That's a clue. So, and I say that's a clue because one, they weren't the original purchaser. So we started gathering this data and we started pinpointing the locations of what these, where these guns were located and by whom, and we had a map. And the map says everything I just said. So when I released that information for public consumption, I won't mention their names, 2 senators and a congressman reached out to me. And from that information, we were able to get the General Assembly to implement a mandatory reporting of lost stolen. Because what we were doing when we would recover a weapon, we would go to the original purchaser, knock on his door, and because there was no law that mandated you reported lost or stolen, even if you were buying multiple guns, you can say, oh well, right? But now you have a law that's holding you responsible. And what happened? We started seeing slight reductions. Some of the things I'm doing here in Urbana have already started. It's capturing data. We now know relatively quickly when things are about to get bad through a process called CompStat. Now, we can't do it to the degree we did it in North because we don't have the capacity, but we have enough information that my staff and I and the officers and the investigators, we know what happened over the weekend and we know what's developing in a timely fashion. We have a very talented criminal analyst, Melissa, who's been interfacing with my folks back home, and she's developed some very comprehensive processes. I'm very proud of her for that. So addressing youth crime is going to take all of us. Crime, period, is going to take all of us. You know, gone are the days that you're going to put it on the police. That's not even fair. It's not even practical. It's not even doable. But together, we can move mountains. I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
Can you just address where you are on staffing? How capacity?
Well, I don't want to get in front of council. And what I mean by that, my process and my philosophy has always been any huge changes or any request or down the line planning, I like to run it by council and the mayor and city manager first.
So you talked about how you're a progressive
that's what they told me, and thus far, that's what I see.
Yeah. So, can you talk a little bit about specific plans that you think are progressive that you're going to implement moving forward? Just a little bit of more specifics on what your plans are exactly for Urbana, these progressive.
So, policies. Let's say policies in terms of affording the community to have a say. I don't want to highlight any specific policies, but policies in which there's procedures that adversely impact the community. Adversely, the community ought to have a say in how do we go about addressing that. With respect to community relations, we're going to find a way to intersect with our youth, whether it's through the school system or another measure. With respect to our minority communities, we're going to be in those communities. We're going to be in the churches. Okay, we're going to have an opportunity here to not just police, but police from a guardian lens, a lens that when little boys and little girls see PD, that's what I want to be. So when I think of progressive, I think of interfacing with the LGBTQ plus community, the Hispanic community, the Asian community, all communities. You'll see once I get out of this monkey suit and the uniform, I'm going to be everywhere. And the purpose of that is to be the ambassador for our department and show folks that we are there to serve them. We are their servant, okay? And I think together we can make some inroads. I know how to do this, okay? I'm not a guy that leads from the desk. A mere Google of Larry Boone, there's a ton of information. And there's a ton of information because I'm very active, and I expect the women and men of this department to be very active as well. But I want to underscore, we will be law and order, okay? We'll be 99% guardian, but there are moments where you have to put folks in jail, and no one will push me off that cliff, okay?
About to implement no cash bail, and I know that you're still acclimating to the area, getting new and
Yeah.
familiar things. I don't know if you can speak on it, but have you briefed yourself on what the new policies will be with no cash bail, and how do you navigate moving forward as a new chief coming to a new area with that?
Well, the law has already been established, and like any other law, I will brush myself up on it and adhere to said policies. I'm not going to get involved in politics. I saw that coming. Good try. But the law is the law. So I'm here in Illinois now, and quite frankly, that's not new to me. Okay, Virginia, I think, was a little bit ahead at the time. And I don't know if it's policy yet in Virginia, but I know that was discussion. So, but anyway, that's something I'm just going to adhere to. The law is the law. We follow the law.
Going back to school this week, a lot of parents are talking about back to school safety. I know last year the Urbana School District faced multiple threats. It left a lot of parents a little nervous to send their kids to school. What would your message be to parents as they're sending their kids to school this week, with regards to safety?
That's a good question. So tomorrow, my staff and I, as you see us today, and some other officers, we'll be there to greet the kids. Okay, you're talking about something different, right? Different. So my goal is to, when threats are made, to investigate them swiftly, right? To prosecute swiftly, to ensure that my women and men are adequately trained to address school threats, active shooters, things of that nature. And they already do a really good job of doing that already. But I think there's an opportunity for modification And my message to the parents of Urbana is that they have my word that I will do everything in my power to ensure that their loved ones are safe. And if should anything happen to them, they will be able to get a hold of me directly. Okay, there will not be any in-betweens. Wherever I go, I give my cell phone number out to anybody. I don't care who it is. And I expect that of my staff as well. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Nancy Carter. I'm with NAMI, the National ever that I've come to one of these. So, a little new to it. I'm a little uncomfortable, but Officer Coker over here has been deeply involved with the mental health community and held every other month get-togethers with the people that are in charge and know what's going on in the mental health community. And I think Urbana has done a fabulous job in starting a program where a CIT trained officer goes out with a social worker on a mental health call. And I just hope that you will continue that and continue to have your officers interface with mental health community.
Yes, absolutely. If anything, I hope to improve it.
Well, Urbana has, of the 5 different police entities that are in this area, has really done an outstanding job. Things like, you know, the police officer doesn't wear a uniform because oftentimes people are triggered
Sure.
by a uniform. And I'm just curious, did they not have a uniform that fits you today? Because you have all these other guys and they're all in this and they look very official and then you're...
I don't look official?
No, you look like an outsider.
Okay.
You don't look like you belong with the rest of the guys.
Okay, we're going to fix that. We're in the process of fixing that. There's certain hurdles I have to clear before I can wear the uniform mandated by state. So we're getting...
Like what?
I got to take a test.
Oh, you haven't passed the test yet.
No, I hadn't had the test yet.
Oh, you haven't had the test.
Yeah, don't say I hadn't passed.
Okay.
I hadn't had. Okay. So yeah, I just can't come in from Virginia and give me a uniform. There's certain mandates. Oh, I know.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to our community.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Coming from Norfolk, it's such a much bigger city, much bigger. How are you planning on kind of transitioning into coming into a smaller department, and what kind of changes will you have to make in how you approach your job?
Yeah, I tell you, you know, I spent 2 weekends here, and I kept looking at my phone because, you know, having been police chief for almost 7 years, in Norfolk, I would have had 50 calls, you know, over the weekend, and I'm like, wow, so I'm going to embrace it, all right? I'm going to embrace it, and we will do it the Urbana way. Urbana's not Norfolk, Norfolk's not Urbana. It's clearly 2 different places, so we'll find a model that fits Urbana with the input of my staff and the community. We'll do it the Urbana way. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
Chief, have you moved here? I mean, found a place to live, got your family here?
I live in Urbana. I live in Urbana. My family is still out east. My kids are in college, so. Any other question, folks? Well, I appreciate you all coming out. Again, my goal is to connect PD with the community, with the media, with various groups to make us a better community. I look forward to serving you, okay? Serving you. So does my staff. I am tremendously pleased with their energy, their commitment to serving the community. And I always say this, we get it right far more than we get it wrong. And there'll be moments we'll get it wrong, and we'll address that. But we'll address that from a lens of due process. So, okay.
So right now, there's a national police shortage. Do you feel like that's impacting this department right now? And how do you hope to kind of balance that shortage with properly policing the community?
Again, I recognize there is a police shortage all across the nation. There is a plan that's going to surface in the coming weeks. I don't want to get in front of Barry Dunn and council, so I'll if you just let me pause on that for now, okay? But there is a plan to address your question. Welcome.
Is there a phone number that you want to give out now so that we can have it and share it with people that we know?
Once, you know what? I don't have my card on me, but we'll get it. We'll get it to you. Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.